I'm here to tell you about the one sentence that will save the world. Just one brief statement. I know this seems like an outrageous claim, but just give me a few minutes and I'll show you what I mean. I guarantee it will be interesting and inspiring. I'll start with a story about a superpower. This is a real superpower, not a comic book one. But like the comic book heroes, this power can be used for great good or great evil, can be beneficial or destructive. And there is a potential fatal flaw, like kryptonite, that must be avoided. To begin, let's go back 1,000,000 years in human evolution on this planet. At that time, we were just an insignificant member of the ape family, just another species among many. We were not particularly big, fast, or strong, but we had dexterous hands and large brains that were continually developing. Over the next hundreds of thousands of years, our population grew slowly as we spread throughout the globe. We lived in tribes that were typically between 100 and 200 people, as that was the maximum number we could know personally, faces we could remember and trust. We lived by hunting and gathering, and so were directly connected to our life support. We knew that we could survive only through the health and bounty of our environment, and that the animals we hunted gave their lives for ours. Our basic worldview was circular, the great circle of life, where all beings are connected and all depend on each other. Like all other species, we lived within the balance of nature and could probably have gone on like this indefinitely. But about 70,000 years ago, our brains evolved to the point of abstract thought, where we could think not just about the present, but the past and the future. We developed the ability to create stories, scenarios, plans, and communicate them to each other. This allowed us to work together in larger and larger numbers and unleashed our superpower, teamwork. Whereas individually people are not that powerful, 12, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 working together are almost unstoppable. And not just with coordination of labor, but with sharing of ideas and technology. Our settlements then began to grow in size, and about 10,000 years ago started becoming permanent. We then needed to exert more and more control over our immediate environment through farming, engineering, and domestication of animals. Labor became specialized, and increasing numbers of people lost the direct connection to their life support, becoming immersed in the human-centric world of business, trade, manufacturing, and politics. Their primary experience shifted from that of an ecosphere, the great circle of life, to an egosphere, all about humans and human relationships. As a result, their primary worldview began to change from circular and egalitarian to pyramid-like and hierarchical, with humans on top and everything else below. In other words, we started to believe that we were in charge of the world and that it was all about us. And that's the fatal flaw, hubris. It's been a common theme in the arts for centuries, and that's not a coincidence. The laws of life did not change, but human story about our place in the circle of life did, and it obviously doesn't fit. Our superpower of teamwork has given us incredible benefits in health, longevity, and comfort, but because of the fatal flaw, has also caused much destruction, violence, and suffering. And now the negative is outweighing the positive and is threatening us all. And that's where the one sentence comes in. Our superpower, teamwork, is created, directed, and controlled by stories, the plans we make together to align our energies. The stories come first, and the actions follow. Therefore, the stories are the most powerful and the most important. Stories are made up of sentences, and usually there is one key sentence, key concept. That's the foundation, the mission statement, as it were. That sentence makes all the difference. Now, this is a familiar concept in our daily lives, as many businesses and organizations have mission statements. Some people may think these are frivolous, but businesses spend a lot of time and money crafting them because they know they're important. With all the changes that can occur within a group of people, there needs to be something that keeps them aligned and working together. And the stronger that is, the more successful they are. So my one sentence is essentially a mission statement for humanity. Now, I'm not talking about what is the purpose of life, as that would be an endless debate. I'm looking at the absolute fundamentals. To have a purpose in life, We must be alive and stay alive. So the primary concept is survival and reproduction. And what would be best for that? Well, for 99% of our time on Earth, we've had this worldview, and we've survived and thrived for over 1 million years. For the last 1% of our time, most of us have had this worldview, and we're causing global disruption and extinction on an unprecedented scale. I think the choice is easy. And what sentence sums up this perspective? This one. All creatures on Earth, including human beings, are intimately connected and depend on each other for mutual survival. So let me recap this train of thought that has been so enlightening and so inspiring for me. First, realizing that there is a basic story. This is the most important and can be the most difficult, because the story is usually taken for granted as simply the way things are. It's accepted and unquestioned, and that's what makes it so powerful. But there has to be a story of some kind, or we could not align our energies. Second, that the story assumes human supremacy over all other creatures. Again, this may be hard to see because it's taken for granted, but it's obvious when you look. It's stated clearly on the first page of the Bible, quote, "Subdue the earth and have dominion over it." And this is echoed in non-religious realms as well. Other creatures are typically lumped together as nature, something we either exploit or need to care for, but something separate from us. Third, that this is not the only human story. It was very eye-opening for me to finally learn that the history I was taught in school was primarily from the last few thousand years of written records from cultures that follow the human supremacy story. The rest was considered prehistoric and essentially disregarded as irrelevant. But this was 99% of our true history. Expanding my historical perspective and paying attention to current indigenous cultures showed that there were many, many other human stories, and that the ones which were most successful in the long term were circular, as I've described. I think you can see that following this train of thought, which I've been on for over 30 years, leads to the conclusion that the most important thing we can do for our global survival is adopt a new story. And of course, we have a new story. Or rather, we're beginning to awaken from our fever dream of the last few thousand years and remember what we've always known. The ecological movement recognizes that we cannot continue to treat the Earth as a combination resource center and waste dump and expect to survive on it, and that other creatures are not just nature, but crucial partners in our web of life. I'm here to hasten the adoption of this story. So let me digress for a minute to show how best to do that. Let's say you have a serious computer problem. It's locking up, you can't access your files, we all know the story. You have that sinking feeling and your first thought usually is it a hardware problem or a software problem? If it's a hardware problem, you have a big, potentially expensive issue. That's the bad news. But if it's a software problem, you could be able to fix it right away for nothing. And that's the good news. So let's go with the good news and say you're able to download the new operating system update. Is that good enough? No, you have to install it and reboot the system, otherwise it's useless. But that can happen very quickly and you're good to go. Now, will the rebooted computer write your reports and answer your emails? Of course not. You still have to do that yourself, but now you have a functioning tool to do so. Whereas before you were stymied and could not do your work successfully no matter how hard you tried. We have a huge problem with the way we're living on this planet, and the key question, strange as it may seem, is the same one. Is it a hardware problem or a software problem? Because we have not recognized our dysfunctional fundamental story as just a story, our logical conclusion has been that it's a hardware problem, that we're hardwired to act this way. In some cases, we've even gone so far as to believe that it was God's plan to make us fundamentally flawed, so that we might create an apocalypse as part of some kind of judgment day. This is truly frightening, as it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm here to give you the best possible news. It's a software problem. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with us. It's just our story that's flawed. And we have the new story, the new operating system, already downloaded. We've actually known it for 1 million years. and now we need to install it and reboot the system. So how do we do that? And the answer is simple. We declare it to be so. A Declaration of Interdependence, consisting of one simple sentence, the one sentence that makes all the difference. That's the way it works with stories. We create them, and we agree to follow them. We all know about the Declaration of Independence. In 1776 they created it, they signed it, and it began something remarkable. In computer language, they made a new operating system and then rebooted their social system by signing and agreeing to a new alignment. As with the computer, the Declaration by itself did not solve their problems and create a new country. They had to do that themselves. But it allowed them to do so successfully. Without the Declaration, that never would have happened. We cannot solve our critical problems under the sway of the old story because the story is the problem. It's not the world, it's not us, it's our fundamental story. And because this worldview does not fit our planet, we have no chance to be successful, and failure is not an option. We need to reboot our society with a functional operating system, one that is in line with the reality of the world we live in. A Declaration of Interdependence would put us on the path to creating something remarkable. It would shift the energy that is now directed towards separation, domination, and exploitation, and move it towards connection, cooperation, and regeneration. This one sentence will save the world. And that's my sales pitch. I hope your perspective on my outrageous claim has shifted a bit from the start of this video. But even if it has, I know from experience that you probably have doubts. You may be thinking like company employees in a mission statement project. Hey, why bother with a couple of sentences to hang on the wall? We need to develop products and make sales. Hey, a Declaration of Interdependence is too vague. We need to organize, win elections, pass laws. And I agree 1,000%. A main point of this declaration is to help further democracy and the common good, to be more successful at these things. Because right now, what we're doing is not working well at all. And it certainly makes sense to be open to new ideas. And remember, I'm talking about the most fundamental of our assumptions, the bottom line perspective that affects not only global issues, but business, social interaction, personal relationships, everything in our lives. In business, which point of view do you think would favor huge inequities in the workplace, where CEOs earn 300 times what the average employee does? And which one would favor fair pay and labor unions? In social issues, which one would favor discrimination and racial profiling, and which one would support diversity and equity? In family relationships, which one would favor hierarchy and male domination, and which one gender balance and equal partnership? And in politics, which story would favor dictatorship, and which one democracy? The story affects everything and is the most significant force in our lives. That's why I'm doing this. But even if you align with the new story, there is, of course, the challenge of getting other people to adopt it and agree to follow it, especially in a country as polarized as the United States. Now, you may think that this polarization is bad news, but it's actually very good news. Let me explain. I think that if you look deeply, beneath all the hot-button issues that dominate the news, you'll find that the primary cause of this polarization is a shift in fundamental worldview. I believe a significant portion of Americans are already living under the new story, and that probably includes you. Now, this may not seem like enough people, but when I was born in 1950, almost no one had made this shift. Historically speaking, the trend is remarkable and very hopeful. Yes, the old story is still formidable and is rearing its ugly head all around the world. But it's on its last legs, as reality always wins out in the end. It's a matter of how much damage it does before it expires, and my goal is to minimize that damage. The United States is ground zero for the conflict of the two stories, with its emphasis on independence and freedom and the primacy of the individual. All wonderful things, of course, but like all things in life, to be most effective, they must be reasonable and in context. Here is an example of people who were literally independent and free. A woman and her son lost in the woods who almost died. The happy ending was when they were reconnected to society, that vast interdependent team that provides life support for us all, our superpower. It's easy to take it for granted, but our life support is a result of the coordinated efforts of literally millions of people around the world. Food, clothing, goods, appliances, electricity, water, everything we have and use. This is made possible by thousands of smaller stories, plans, agreements, accepted and followed by millions of people. It's truly astounding. The term superpower might be an understatement. And all this is, of course, further supported by the even more astounding web of life. The words independence and freedom do not exist in the dictionary of life on earth. It's all interdependence and connection. And the freedoms that we all cherish are only meaningful in the human realm and are extremely limited. We want freedom of speech, but we can't threaten someone else's life or yell fire in a crowded theater. We want freedom of movement, but we can't trespass on someone else's property. By general consent, these freedoms are subordinate to the common good, so they don't interfere with others' freedoms. And they only make sense if we have our needs met to the point of having time and means to exercise them. They only exist if our superpower of teamwork is working well. So here's the critical insight, which has been obscured by the old story. There is no freedom from. There is only freedom with. Freedom from each other leads to poverty and death. We only have true freedom when we work with each other. By using the words independence and freedom as mindless buzzwords, we are undermining our superpower of teamwork and creating crisis conditions. And the first things that are lost in a crisis are individual rights and freedoms. You know, it's really remarkable that people will go on and on about independence and freedom, then go home and order dinner, food sourced from all around the world, prepared and delivered by other people, then sit down to watch TV, programs made all around the world and delivered by connection to a worldwide communication system. And they'll be upset if their food is 10 minutes late or their Wi-Fi is down for an hour. We are the least independent people in history. How can this delusion be so widespread? It's the old dysfunctional story, of course. It can make us collectively blind to what is right in front of us, and that is a very dangerous thing. It's time to end this delusion once and for all.